Q. Paradise Lost was started in ANS 1658. Q. Paradise Lost was completed in ANS 1663. Q. Paradise Lost was published for the first time in ANS 1667. Q. In 1667, Paradise Lost was published in ANS 10 books. Q. Paradise Lost was published for the second time in ANS 1674. Q. In 1674, Paradise Lost was published in ANS 12 books. Q. Paradise Lost is written in ANS blank verse. Q. Hero of Paradise Lost is ANS Satan. Q. What is the theme of Paradise Lost? ANS to justify the ways of God to men. Q. First Milton thought to write an epic on ANS King Arthur. Q. Later changed his subject and wrote on the ANS Fall of Man. Q. A parody on Paradise Lost is ANS Cain. Q. One doctrine is found in Paradise Lost. Which one? ANS freedom of will. Q. Paradise Lost is based on ANS biblical theme. Q. In Paradise Lost Book 1, Satan is compared to ANS Leviathan. Q. When do Adam and Eve meet for the first time? ANS in Book 4. Q. In Book 3, Milton discusses the principle of free will and ANS divine justice. Q. Michael tells Adam about the future in ANS Book 11 and Book 12. Q. Who leads Adam and Eve out of paradise? ANS Michael. Q. Who is considered a hero for arguing against Satan? ANS Abdiel. Q. Milton invokes a muse. ANS 3 times. Q. The main architect of pandemonium is ANS Mulciber. Q. Milton used, in Paradise Lost, ANS Homeric simile. Q. Who first of all said that Satan is the hero of Paradise Lost? ANS John Dryden. Q. John Dryden's The State of Innocence is based on ANS Paradise Lost. Q. Adam, Satan, and Eve herself are all dazzled by Eve's ANS beauty. Q. Every day before the fall Adam and Eve went out to work. What did their work consist of? ANS tending to the Garden of Eden. Q. Who was the first to eat the forbidden fruit? ANS Eve. Q. What is the capital of hell? ANS the Pandemonium. Q. Eve is most surprised by the serpent's ability to ANS talk. Q. Who said the following: the mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven? ANS Satan. Q. Michael shows Adam a vision of biblical history from the time of Adam through the birth of ANS Jesus. Q. Paradise Lost is famous for ANS satanic speeches. Q. What is pandemonium in Paradise Lost? ANS a meeting hall. Q. Which angel is said to have departed to heaven in the beginning of Book 9 of Paradise Lost? ANS Raphael. Q. Milton asserts his intention that the fall of humankind is more heroic than the tales of ANS Virgil and Homer. Q. Whom does Milton invoke in Book 9? ANS Urania. Q. What does Milton fear about? ANS he fears he is too old and lacks the required creative powers. Q. What defect does Milton find in Homer and Virgil? ANS getting caught up in the description of unimportant details. Q. When did Satan return to the Garden of Eden after Raphael's departure? Ans. The night after Raphael's departure. Q. After how many days did Satan return to Eden after he was caught and banished by Gabriel? Ans. 8 days. Q. Why does Satan hesitate for a moment when he visits Eden for the second time? Ans. Because of his grief at not being able to enjoy the wondrous new world. Q. Why was Satan jealous of Adam and Eve? Ans. Because of their chosen status to occupy and maintain paradise. Q. The excess beauty of earth causes Satan to feel. Ans. More torment and anguish. Q. What was the serpent doing when Satan enters its body? Ans. Sleeping. Q. Who suggests that Adam and Eve should work separately? Ans. Eve. Q. Why does Eve suggest that they work separately? Ans. So that they might get more work done. Q. What was Adam's reaction to Eve's idea of working separately? Ans. Adam was not keen on that idea. Q. What was Satan's reaction when he found Eve alone? Ans. He was delighted. Q. What does Satan do after getting the attention of Eve? Ans. He begins flattering her beauty. Q. What was Eve's reaction on seeing Satan speak? Ans. She was amazed to see a creature of the garden speak. Q. Satan tells Eve that God forbids eating that fruit only because. Ans. He wants them to show their independence. Q. The flattery of Satan makes Eve. Ans. Desire to know more. Q. Eve reasons that God claimed that eating from this tree meant death, but the serpent ate, and not only does he still live but can. Ans. Speak and think. Q. What is the genre of Paradise Lost? Ans. Epic poetry. Q. The original publisher of Paradise Lost was. Ans. Samuel Simmons. Q. How many lines were there in the first edition of Paradise Lost? Ans. More than 10,000. Q. The story of Paradise Lost begins in hell, where Satan and his followers were in war against God. Ans. Defeated. Q. How many narrative arcs does Paradise Lost have? Ans. 2. Q. The longest book in Milton's Paradise Lost is. Ans. Book 9. Q. Which angel does Satan trick by disguising himself as a cherub? Ans. Uriel. Q. In what book does the fall take place? Ans. Book 9. Q. In which book of the Bible does the story of Adam and Eve occur? Ans. Genesis. Q. Which devil advocates a renewal of all-out war against God? Ans. Moloch. Q. Which angel wields a large sword in the battle and wounds Satan? Ans. Michael. Q. When Satan leaps over the fence into paradise, what does Milton liken him to? Ans. A wolf leaping into a sheep's pen. Q. Which statement about the earth is asserted as true in Paradise Lost? Ans. Earth hangs from heaven by a chain. Q. Which poets does Milton emulate? Ans. Virgil and Homer. Q. Who discusses cosmology and the battle of heaven with Adam? Ans. Raphael. Q. In an attempt to defeat God and his angels, what do the rebel angels make? Ans. Pandemonium.